Self-care, taking care of your body and mind for the endurance athlete. Episode 103, the Do Hard Things Today podcast. All right, we are back on the podcast, and we are talking self-care. We've got everyone's favorite triathlon and running coach, Coach Katie Malone, in the house with us, and we are going to dive into some things that I think is a much-needed podcast that is something I know that has affected me and my ability to perform better, but has always been something that I have been very, very lacking in for a lot of reasons, and there's probably a lot of our listeners that this is something that just has not been a priority for them, and that is self-care. So when we say self-care, Coach, what in the world are we talking about? This sounds like a new age mystical thing out there that we call self-care, but I know that's not what it is. So when we hear the word self-care, what does that mean?
So I think the big misconception with self-care is that it's, going to get a massage or just sleeping more, which those are good things. Those are definitely considered self-care. But I think of self-care as all the things that you need to do to be successful, but don't count as part of your training time. But yet they can be pretty time consuming. You had made a little list that you sent me, which I thought was very good. I'm not surprised where you get it from because...
No, you did not think it was good because you have already made a smart comment about it before we even started the podcast.
No, I just mentioned one thing you missed. But so the one thing... self-care, what types of self-care? This is the list that Kevin sent me, and it was stretching, which is very important. Yoga came right after that. So I think that most athletes, when you tell people to stretch, they don't stretch. And so that's why maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I started actually putting like little yoga videos on people's schedule, because I felt like if people had a little bit more direction, they might actually do the stretching. And while I realize yoga is not stretching,
okay.
In a way it is.
Then what's the difference there? And you said because people don't do stretching, I put yoga in.
Right.
So what's the difference there? And is one more important than the other?
Wow. Kevin's asking hard questions today. Okay. So for stretching, I think of it as being more static, holding the stretches for longer, just stretching your back, hamstrings, quads, maybe sitting cross-legged a little bit, kind of pushing your knees down towards the floor. But those are all things that you also do in yoga. So like yoga is maybe better than just stretching because you get more of a variety of stretches. When I think about if I'm just stretching, I just sit down and I stretch all the stuff that I know I have issues with, like my lower back, my hamstrings, my quads. Those are always kind of my go-to things. But yoga is going to give you more of a full body workout, I think.
So specifically for and we're going to talk about we're going to talk about the aging athlete. We're going to talk about all these different things, but specifically for an endurance athlete, which we're going to call runners, triathletes, in that cyclist, whatever that may be. What am I? Let me answer this, and you tell me if I am correct.
Okay.
Because I have seen this in the things that I've been doing as I've looked up some of the videos you've sent, and then just researching these things. It's very easy to research yoga for runners, stretching for runners, those type of things. But generally, what I'm finding is that it's when hips are huge, and I think that's one that I was not stretching. Generally you tell people to start stretching, they're going to put their feet together and reach down and grab their toes. And that's a great, it's a hamstring stretch.
Yep,
it's a great,
there you go.
And they may get into that, the old runner stretch, where
they're like a lunge almost.
Yep. I mean, you're doing these, but what I have found that has given me the most benefit has been these hip and I don't know what it is. I call it, and my daughter is, one of my daughters is a runner, and she does this same thing, but I call it, I said, you should feel it. You should be uncomfortable right in the middle of your butt, your glute muscle. I don't know what connects right there, but when I pull my knee back and pull it to the side, I really feel it stretching. I've seen the most benefit out of these hips, glute type of, and I don't know, there's probably I don't know what I'm stretching there, but is that generally going to be where endurance athletes are going to get the most, I would call just balled up, is going to be in those areas?
Well, endurance athletes in general are not flexible and just super tight. I mean, all the areas that you use, and you use your big muscles the most, like your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings. I mean, those are the ones we just pound on the bike and running. So, doing what I would consider what you're talking about, more like a hip opener, because we're doing everything kind of in like one plane of motion. And so when you pull your legs out to the side, which is something that you're not typically doing when you're running or biking, hopefully, all of a sudden, you're kind of changing the movement and opening those muscles and relaxing them, because when we train a lot, our muscles get super tight. And the goal with the stretching and the yoga is to loosen them up so that you can reduce your chances of being injured and also perform better.
So stretching, yoga.
Yes, stretching, yoga.
And we'll talk about some specific things they can do at the end. But what would be, let's continue down my little list.
Continue down your list. Okay. So the next one was rolling. And that is, I'm assuming he means with a big foam roller. It's probably like maybe 10 inches in diameter, kind of
I've got one.
Hard roller that you lay on the floor and roll over your muscles. If you're sore, it's super uncomfortable. Not really a fun thing to do, but it does help loosen your muscles up, kind of breaks up the soreness or scar tissue.
So this is the difference, though. I mean, stretching and yoga, you're stretching these things out. This is actually doing something to
yes.
your
This
muscle.
is doing something to the muscle. It's one of those things where it's good to do sometimes, but not all the time. You can overdo it with a roller. Mm-hmm. And I have seen people, especially if they think they're starting to get injured, and they're like, let me roll more. If a little bit's good, more is better. And that's not always the case with the roller. So you do, it's one thing if you're just using it for maintenance, no problem. But like if you start to think you're getting injured and then you're overdoing it, that can kind of cause its own issues. So we've got rolling. Physical therapy was the next one. Physical therapy is one that I consider way up there on the list, because a lot of times you can go to the physical therapist before you are injured. Like if you feel like something just isn't right, you don't necessarily have to go to the orthopedic first. You can go to the physical therapist, and they can look at you running, depending on which physical therapist you go to. And they can a lot of times identify what's going on and why your hip is hurting or why your hamstring is so tight on one side. And I think physical therapists, people have the impression that you have to be hurt to go to the physical therapist. And I think physical therapists really should be like our new best friend. As an athlete, you should have a relationship with a physical therapist. So as soon as something's not right, don't wait till like you can't move your leg, go to the physical therapist.
Define something's not right.
Something's not right.
Because, every day, if you're training and if you get into some, consistent training, you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, oh, I don't feel exactly right. But a lot of that soreness and
soreness,
other things.
So, I'll just use myself as an example. I'm a long-time runner. I had hip surgery in the fall. So I've had to kind of retrain my gait. So nothing hurts when I'm running, really. but I felt like I was overusing my right leg and I was feeling tightness in my hamstring. And so I went to the physical therapist and I said, what am I doing when I'm running? So they looked at me running, they hooked me up to a gait analysis, and it was very obvious that I had changed my gait to compensate for the hip that had been hurt. And that was causing me to overuse my right hamstring. So they gave me exercises to do, a lot of core work, a lot of stability, really engaging my glutes. Also work a little bit on my running form, like kind of my stance, where I'm landing, how I'm landing. And so I'm doing that and I'm able to run without having that pain in my right hamstring. Now, I wasn't really hurt, but I just felt like I shouldn't be having any pain in my right hamstring if things are going as they should. And that's just an example of, I'm using a physical therapist for what they're really good at. And I think so many times, like, we wait till our hamstring is totally seized up. We have to go to the orthopedic and then we get referred to the physical therapist, where I just nipped it in the bud, went right to the physical therapist and, addressed the issue.
Okay. So physical therapy, and then right on the heels of that, chiropractic.
Chiropractic. Now, chiropractic is one of those things where I think that that's important for maintenance. Again, I encourage athletes to have a relationship with a chiropractor so that you're going on a pretty regular basis. And this kind of keeps your spine, your hips in line, keeps you healthy. If you go to the chiropractor on a regular basis and keep everything kind of lined up and as it should be, typically you're going to have less injuries. And I'm not saying you have to go 3 times a week to the chiropractor. This is once a week, once every couple weeks. A lot of times your insurance will even pay for you to go to the chiropractor. It's just a great thing to do for your overall health. Chiropractors, I feel like over the years have been a little bit misunderstood. People think, I only go to them if I got whiplash. And that's really not the case. I will typically have my chiropractor adjust my ankles, constantly working on my hips, my lower back. It's always something different depending on what I'm doing, but I just have that relationship where I'm going, once a week, once every couple weeks, depending on where I am. Or if I feel like I'm running a lot and biking a lot and I need to go more frequently, I might go twice a week. It's quick and it's easy. It's like 15 minutes.
Just from a personal standpoint, I've got to know about ankle adjustment. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was something that could be done.
Yes. So with the ankles, and a lot of times, like if your ankle isn't quite right, it's stemming from your hip or your knee. And so they will go kind of backwards and looking at. But sometimes for me, it really is just my ankle needs to be adjusted. And it feels so good when they do it. And like I said, going to the chiropractor, it's really quick, but you feel so much better when you leave.
Right.
Yeah, this is a takeaway that I am going to take from this. But I've got a good friend who's a chiropractor, and I would go. And when I go, and they always fuss at me, like, Kevin, you can't just show up every 90 days. And because when I sit down, he'll look, it's like, yep. He said, your leg, it's about an inch. It's about an inch longer right now because your hip gets out of, and I kind of get a little bit twisted, and they'll adjust me and do the whole thing. But they do that little thing with your ankle, kind of pop it out.
Well,
and then,
that's going to chase me to a chiropractor sometime soon because that's amazing.
Well,
But
I think
it's stemming from the hip.
Yeah.
Again, usually any good chiropractor is going to look up from the place where you're having the issue. But it's that going on a regular basis, it will allow you to hold the adjustment. Because if you only go once every 90 days, the adjustment might not actually hold because your muscles are so tight because you've been in that position for a long time. So if you go more frequently, like your body starts to get used to accepting the adjustment. And it's like you never want to get adjusted and go out and run right afterwards.
Yeah.
And sometimes, honestly, like the next thing on the self-care is massage. it's really nice if your chiropractor offers massage to get a massage first. So all your muscles are relaxed and then you go and get adjusted.
Yeah.
And for people who are scared of the chiropractor, it is not always like cracking your neck and cracking your back. That's not always what chiropractic is. Sometimes you need that, but there are other modes of chiropractic. So I encourage you to find a chiropractor that kind of is close by, easy for you to get to, but also one who understands, sport and can work with you.
Yeah. And it's very important to tell them what you're doing. I mean, to tell them, listen, I am not, because sometimes it's like, dude, you run a lot of miles. You're a big guy. I remember when I had some meniscus surgery 15 years ago, and physical, he said, look, he said, you need to understand, you continue doing these things. And we talked about this on the last spot about the knee, but said, you're going to have your knee replaced at some point. So, but, your heart and everything else is going to really, really benefit from it. So you just need to understand you're doing this. And I know the chiropractor that I use, he said, look, okay, if you're going to do what you're going to do, then you need to understand that you have got to take care of your body, and you've got to do everything you can to limit some of this beating that you're putting on that. But I see a theme developing here that self-care is not about when the car is smoking, take it to the shop.
Right. Maybe preventative maintenance is a good word.
Yeah. It's about going in and getting the oil changed on a regular basis when nothing is wrong.
Definitely. And that's where I like to have relationships with all these different people, so that it's not a big deal when you have to reach out to the physical therapist to make that call.
Yeah.
Or, massage, chiropractic, again, you kind of go on a regular basis. With a massage therapist, the massage therapist that I use, he specializes in sports massage. And I love to go to him and not tell him anything just because it's fun. This is a game we play. And he will say, wow, your right glute is really tight and your right hamstring. And I'll be like, oh yeah, that's where I'm having my problems. Or he'll say, oh, your left shoulder is crazy tight and you've got a lot of stress. You're holding stress in your back, or kind of under your scapula. And he just knows. Like, I don't even have to tell him. That's how in tune he is. And, massage therapists, there are people who you will go to and they will just rub on you. That's nice. A sports massage therapist, like somebody who really specializes in working with athletes, it is not comfortable. It's gonna kind of hurt. It feels a little bit like a workout, but
it feels a lot like a workout.
Yes, it's not fun. It's not, when I tell people I'm going to get a massage, they're like, oh, that's so nice. And I'm like, no, this is not with oil. This is not with hot stones. We're not
at the Grove Park Inn.
I am not going to fall asleep. My massage therapist constantly tells me to get back on the table. And it's not because I've gotten off the table. It's because I pull myself forward to try to get away from him.
Yeah.
And so after I've done that enough, he says, okay, I get back on the table. So then I have to put myself back where I belong. But, having a good massage therapist to work with, and there are many good massage therapists. There are also a lot of massage therapists who just rub on you, and you might as well save your money if you're going for therapeutic purposes.
Yeah.
And there is a place, trust me, for a hot stone massage. They're nice, but it's not going to help your athletic performance necessarily.
The first time I got a legit sports massage, I walked out, and it literally felt, I'm like, holy cow, I don't know what just happened. But
it can make you sick. It can actually, because they're flushing all the toxins kind of out of your muscles. So you have to drink a lot of water. You definitely don't want to leave there and try to do a workout. And you can feel physically ill when you leave, depending on what kind of work has been done.
Yeah. So
that's my encouragement to get a massage. So the next thing on our list was important. What's the importance kind of self-care for aging athletes? I think the biggest thing that as we age, we have to be aware of is that we need more sleep. That you're not going to recover as quickly from hard workouts. You can't do as many hard workouts back to back. And so like that sleep thing, it's real. You know, maybe when you were younger, you could get away with 6 hours, but as you age, and I'm going to say aging over 45, like you probably need 8 hours to really recover. And that's hard.
What do you think about naps?
I think naps are great if you can successfully nap, which means you can fall asleep and then you can wake up and be a nice person. Personally, I might be able to successfully fall asleep.
You're not a nice person.
I'm not a nice person when I wake up. So I don't like to take naps because they're not really good for anybody in my house.
We observe nap time at my house. And I don't know whether we're nice when we wake up or not, but we're not real nice if we don't have one. So
well, there you go.
That's what we try most of the time.
Naps are really good because they allow your body to recover a little bit in the middle of the day. But having a place to take a nap, having the time to take a nap, being able to fall into your sleep cycle and take a nap and then wake up naturally, you know, those are all things you kind of have to consider, because the worst thing is falling into your deep sleep, taking a nap, and then waking up in the middle of it, because then you're almost worse off than if you hadn't taken a nap.
Yeah. Yeah. And these things, as we age, time becomes, you find yourselves in these periods of life where time is, and you know, and I've struggled with this at times, which has been, okay, got a large family, running a business, got a lot of things going on. Okay, where can you feel guilty taking time away from your family? You got these other constraints. So where are you going to find the time? Well, knock an hour off of your sleep. You know, can I do 6 hours? And then what can happen is these things can compound. Then you're tired. You go do your workout and you're a little bit tired. You're not as focused and you get a little bit out of whack and then develop a little nagging injury. And next thing you know, you're injured and you can't do anything for a while. So
you can do it. Like you said, you know, maybe a couple days you can do it. But if you do it nonstop, you're not going to feel good. And the whole reason we're doing this, all the training, all the self-care, is so that we feel good and so that we can show up for life, work, family, other commitments, the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. And so if you are going to be constantly sleep deprived, you are not going to bring the best version of yourself to any of those things.
That's 100% facts.
And so it's very important that you find that balance. And as I've aged, I found, you know, I used to get up every day at 4:00 and I would work, and then I would do my workout, and then I would take care of my son and get him to school, whatever. I cannot do that anymore. I can get up at 4:00 a couple days a week, maybe, but I'm usually wrecked afterwards. And I just have come to accept that I'm getting older and I've got to stop that. That is not a sustainable habit at almost 50 years old. It's just not. And I don't really want to do that anymore either. I want to have more balance, and I don't want to be exhausted all the time. Being exhausted is not a badge of honor. And I feel like a lot of us kind of grew up with the mentality that you've got to work harder, you've got to do more, you've got to be more, you've got to be there for everybody. And when you are and you're constantly exhausted and drained, that is not where you need to be. And the older you get, you need to accept that and let it go. And it's hard to do because it's just the mentality that I feel like I was raised with. You have to work harder.
Yeah. I mean, I think our generation, that's something that we observed, and then we have always known as more is better. Give me more. And ironically, the things that we like doing, especially people that like to pour into other people, is eventually if you just run completely dry, you got nothing left to give, and then you become a shell of yourself. You used a phrase that I was thinking in my head, which is badge of courage. You mentioned 4 a.m., 5 a.m., those kind of things. They're and it's the whole TikTok, YouTube, everything mentality of get these people like, hey man, I'm up at they're taking pictures of, hey, it's 4 a.m. I'm up pumping iron, I'm up working hard, and which makes a great picture, man. I mean, it's a great picture, and for some people that works. But if you're going to get up at 4 a.m., what you need to understand is to correctly do that, you're really going to need to be in bed by 8.
Right. And now having a child who's, has activities, that is not necessarily dictated by my schedule anymore. Like if he's got sports, we're going to his sports, and we might walk in the door at 9:00, which means I'm probably in bed at 10 if we're honest.
Yep.
I mean, I'd love to say I walk in the door and go to bed, but who can unwind that quickly? And usually, like, personally, I like to take a shower before I go to bed, especially I've been outside. I'm just like, I want to take a shower, get in bed, and that's 45 minutes to an hour by the time I'm settled. And so you have to give yourself that grace and kind of recognize where you are in life. And, some people my age, they have kids that are all grown. And so they're kind of in a different phase. So they can go to bed early and get up early, and it works for them. But you have to find what works for you and your personal life. And just because it works this month doesn't mean it'll work next month. And it's so that you've got to be constantly paying attention to where you are in your cycle.
So how does food and nutrition play into self-care?
So with the nutrition, and we did talk about this a little bit before, but you've got to plan your meals. You've got to eat foods that are nutrient dense. You've got to take care of yourself. And like I said before, pack ahead, plan your food, pack it, take it with you. That way you're not all of a sudden hungry and eating whatever.
Yeah. And your nutrition plays such a key role in all of these things. Sleep, everything that you're doing. I mean, study after study has shown of the things that you're putting in your body affect what happens, especially late at night if you're trying to get to sleep. And so, we don't have to dive too deep into that, but I think it is key. Now, you scolded me and said that my list did not include one of the most important things, which is mental training. So for self-care, how do you take care of yourself mentally?
Yes, I don't know if I scolded him, but I was like, you forgot mental training. And mental training and mental self-care is something that I think is really overlooked. We definitely are more in tune, I think, these days with mental health and, checking in with how are you really? But even so, I think it's something that we're not like super excited to talk about. Like, how are you really? Really, like, tell me, how do you feel mentally? Like, are you really good? Yeah. Or are there things you could work on? And like I said, that where we wear that kind of with like a badge of courage, like how early you can get up and how much you can do and how much you've done. I think with the mental side of things, being able to do meditation, yoga also is good because it kind of slows your mind down and kind of puts the focus on just your movement and slowing your movements. I think that it's really important to be able to kind of manage your mind. I talk a lot about mental training for triathlon and performance, but I think that mental training on a day-to-day basis is also important. And people say, I could never meditate for an hour. Well, guess what? You don't start with an hour. You start with like a minute. There are a lot of apps that kind of will walk you through it. But starting to kind of get your mind calm and quiet, it's a task. And it's one that a lot of people don't do well. And, at the same time, it also kind of reminds you to check in with yourself, like, how am I really doing? Like, are there areas I could improve? Or do I just need to breathe a little bit more often? And even if from a mental standpoint, if you just take like 5 seconds and just breathe and just slow things down, we are not good at slowing down. We're just not.
Yeah. Well, think about generally how our days go and end and start. And for most people, I'd say probably 90% of the people out there, and we're all probably guilty as charged at times of you wake up and you pick up your phone and you've got all these things that are just pouring into your head. Bad news. I mean, if you're a Democrat, you've got bad news about Republicans. Something terrible Republicans have done. If you're a Republican, you got something terrible Democrats have done that's coming at you, and you're getting all these things coming at you, and the world's on fire, and there is war, and all these things are going on. Plus, you've got all these other things that you're looking at that are, look at Jed. He's posting this on Facebook, and Jed's life is just perfect because look at those awesome pictures of Jed and Bonnie and their little dog that's so cute and so sweet.
I mean, he is adorable.
Yeah, and Bonnie would say that too. But it's then you start your mind at that point is you've taken in all these things, and it's negativity that's coming at you because negativity sells, and then it is the other things when you look at social media, which is everybody's highlight reel. And then you start making these comparisons and it's like, crap, I see somebody else has got a picture of 4 a.m. They were up working at, and you got all these things hitting you, and that's how your day starts.
Yeah, that's why I don't like to start the day looking at my phone. And that's taken a lot of discipline to do, is to not look at it. But usually when I do, like, I'll start looking at it after I drop my son off at school. And I'm always like, wow, look at all these people that text me, after 10 o'clock last night. Well, I'll answer them now, because I'm like, typically there's nothing gonna happen at 10 o'clock at night that I can really change anyway. Yeah. And I used to have the mentality that I need to text everybody back at 6 a.m. And so if I would do that, then all of a sudden I'm late with my morning routine and I can't get out of the house. And I was like, you know what? It's not that important. It can wait. And I've just kind of had the relationship with my phone lately where I'm like, it'll be there. I'll answer it. I'll get the emails answered, but it might not be right away. And while maybe that's not a great mentality to have, I have to do that for my own mental wellness.
Well, I think it's a perfect mentality to have.
One of the best things I've ever done is discover on the iPhone that you can override the silent feature. So I've got a few select people on override, so it will always ring or always tone if they need me, if it's an emergency, and everything else is dead silent. And people will say, well, I don't want to text you late and bother you. You're not going to bother me. My phone's on silent. I won't hear it.
Me too. My phone is on silent almost all the time.
That's one of the best things I've ever done, is find out how to let people who might, because my parents are both 75.
Okay.
And Bonnie's parents are about the same. And, if people need us, they can get us. If not, you're not getting me till I see the phone tomorrow morning. And that's one of the best things I've done lately.
Well, and you can train people. Talk to our store managers, things about this of you. If you are constantly, hey, if I text them or if I email them, I'm going to get an email right back. You think about what that does to your day. Mm-hmm. That means you're wasting so much time just monitoring your email, where you can do that in these little, one of my favorite things, focus blocks of time to, hey, once an hour or something, pull up your email, check those for 5 minutes, respond to what you need to respond to. But you can you can train people to understand this is the way. You're not going to get an immediate response. Now, again, there are people that need to, like if my phone rings and it's one of my kids, I mean, they'll tell you.
That's different.
No matter what we're doing, I'm going to answer the phone. And granted, they know, hey, during the day and stuff, you're going to call me, it needs to be something important. Don't just be calling me like, Dad, my friend's being mean to me. It needs to be something important. But you can train people to do that. And I've actually had to really help my team understand, like Jay will tell you, like you'll get random texts from me at just all throughout the day or whatever. And it is, and I've had to let all them know, I'm not expecting an immediate response. What I'm doing is I'm dumping that out of my head. So once I dump that out of my head, if it's something that Jed's the expert on, I don't think about, hey, this is just something I was thinking about that I'm dumping it out there and go ahead.
And that's been a huge challenge for me, because from 25 years in the newspaper business, if your phone goes off with something from somebody, it's time to get to work. So it's been a challenge for me to take that step down. And he said, training people to do that, I'm having to be retrained as to how I approach stuff like that.
But isn't it funny how we've become servants to our phones?
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And I think, like, for my mental health, I just am like, I've got to put it down sometimes and just not look at it. I don't have my phone connected to my Garmin watch. If I'm running, I'm running. I'm not going to talk on the phone. I don't care who calls me. Not going to happen. And there's nothing really I can do to take care of anybody while I'm running anyway. So I don't have it connected to anything, because I just feel like our phones dictate so much of what we do and where we are. And I feel like it has not helped my mental health. And so, like, in general, I look at it and I respond, especially if it's something important during the day. Yep, I'm going to get to it. But late at night, probably not.
Yeah. So what other mental health, but I guess it would be mental health things can we do, to disciplines or habits that we can put in our lives to help us?
I think just knowing your boundaries with other people too, because people will ask a lot from you if you will give a lot. And the more you give, the more people ask for. And sometimes that can be really exhausting, especially if you feel like you're low on energy. And so I think you have to recognize that and deal with it. Like, no is an okay answer. No is an okay answer for kids. Sometimes you can't do it. And as an adult, like, I have a hard time saying no, but sometimes no is okay. And coming to terms with that, like, for me, it's been hard. Like, I really had to wrap my mind around that, you know what, I've got to protect myself.
That's really hard. I've had to learn that the hard way through my life. And you get to a point, because you want to, if you're a serial, what I would call giver, which is, okay, I want to help people. I want to help people. I want to help people. Okay, ask me. I'll figure it out. You become, hey, you want to be that person that got an issue. I want to be the person you call. Well, that sounds great. And it sounds like it's completely pure motives. And you start looking at it and it's like, okay, yeah, I am wanting to help people. But then that becomes kind of your part of your identity, which is, this is what I do. And the next thing you know, you get to a point, and I know I got to a point where there were things that I just had to kind of pull myself, separate myself from. I've been on the school board here for 13 years now, and am highly involved in our district and our community and all these things. And I have absolutely loved that. But I got to a point where I completely burnt out. I mean, about probably a year or so ago, year and a half ago. I mean, expanding the business, community stuff. You got your family, you got school, but you've got all these things going on. And man, I was just pouring.
But it takes constant energy. And
Constant.
that's where, like, of course, people are going to ask you, well, if I ask Kevin, he'll do it.
Yeah.
And he's good at it. Not only will he do it, but he'll do it well. Great. Then let's get Kevin to do it.
Yeah. But then you look up and Kevin's got nothing else to give.
But it takes a toll on you. Like, there's always a price to pay. And, I guess I should say I'm practicing saying no because I'm still not good at it. But, if you can make things happen and get things done, people are going to ask you. And like, I love to make things happen and get things done. But at some point I get overextended and I have to just be like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to step back. I've got to take a break. And I think that, when I talk about mental health, there you go. Like, that's mental health.
Yeah.
Like, how much you have to know your limits. And a lot of athletes and people who are go-getters, they're kind of in the same boat because, they want to really perform well at their sport. They want to show up for their kids. They want to be there for their family. They want to be involved in the community. But at some point, they're only 24 hours in a day. And you have to step back and go, oh, wait a minute. I'm training for my A race right now. I'm going to make that a priority. And sometimes training can be a little selfish. And I know I've had this conversation with you before, but that's okay. Like, it is okay sometimes to take time for yourself to do your training and do what you really want to do, even though we're kind of taught that that's not a good thing. And I'm not saying it's got to be 12 months a year. It's, the last 12 weeks going into your big race. Time to focus.
I've got a question about saying no. And it's on a personal level outside of your absolute obligations to your employer, to your family. You're outside of your absolute obligations. How do you come to the realization that other people depending on you is not your problem? You didn't ask them to, you didn't volunteer. You didn't go out of your way to say, hey, I'll do anything I can. People just assume that you're going to do something.
That's where you have to make that mental switch. And you might have to have that open conversation with them that, I appreciate that you trust me to take on this task,
Right.
but I didn't ask for this task. And right now my life is full and I can't take on that task. And I mean, I say this with the utmost respect because it's hard.
Yeah, it's difficult
because you
to do.
feel like you're letting people down.
Right.
But sometimes to give yourself that self-love, self-care, like, what is self-care? This is self-care. It's knowing your limits. It's not draining yourself so that you have dug yourself into a hole so badly that you can't get out. And I feel like a lot of people are in this boat. When I look at what some of my athletes do on a day-to-day basis from a training standpoint, from a work standpoint, from a volunteer standpoint, it's exhausting. And you can do it for a while, but you can't sustain it. And I think that once people know that you're going to do it, they just get used to you doing it. And so to bring yourself back to kind of a healthy state or take a break, it's a hard conversation. It's not easy.
And it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I remember you saying that, I was like, you're exact where I remember where I was. I was almost at the Peachoid when we were having this conversation. For those of you that are listening across the world, look up the Peachoid and it'll tell you a little bit about where we live. But I remember, you saying that of, you've got to learn to be selfish. And that makes me really uncomfortable because it's, that goes against everything that I have tried to characterize myself by but what I have seen is I got to a point to where I was pretty much just put up my hands. It's like, you know what? I'm just walking away from all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to volunteer. I'm not going I had convinced myself I'm not even going to run for school board this time. I'm going to just step away from all this stuff because I can't do it anymore. I can't be, a guy that just does everything. And so I think stepping back and being a little bit selfish has really helped me to find, balance, a better balance of, what, I don't have to be, I can be involved in these things and be a voice and be someone who makes a difference and makes things happen and gets other people involved and can be the catalyst for a lot of these things without having to be the end all answer to everybody's question. And that has been the being selfish, which seems like a bad word, makes me uncomfortable even talking about it, really. I'm saying that it's good to be selfish. Mm-hmm. But it has been, it has really helped me to be able to prioritize the real things that matter and look and say, okay, what really matters, and it is, it's tough. It's a discipline. But anything else on the mental health aspect of this?
Oh, I think we covered it. I think we covered the important parts.
So before we talk about how to get started and some tools, are there any other things from a self-care standpoint, whether it be physical, any other things? I mean, you've got those tools such as the Normatec boots and all those kind of things. I mean, are those valuable? Is it something? Are those just nice to haves, or what? Are there any other things that are out there that people might want to be aware of?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things out there. I can't even begin to list all of them right now. I mean, pretty much everything is available to people at home now that used to have to go to a physical therapist for, or, medical office. You can have a TENS unit. You've got the Normatec boots. You've got cryotherapy that's where you stand in like a freezing cold chamber for 3 minutes and, freeze yourself. But it's amazing for recovery. We have so many things available. I mean, and they're like these patches that can detect where your pain is now. You can do lactate testing at home. You can do sweat testing at home. I mean, anything you can imagine is available. Do you need it all? No. Is some of it nice to have? Sure. Depends on your issues, depends on, what you're doing. But I think that you don't want to overcomplicate things to start with. Because right now, even the list that we had, like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. But, I think if you start with the stretching, you find yourself a physical therapist, a chiropractor, and a massage therapist. There you go.
So what you're saying is before you go buy a $15,000 triathlon bike, you might want to discipline yourself to get out and actually ride once a week.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Same concept there. And I guess you can, because all those things that you mentioned, they sound expensive. I don't know how expensive they are, but all those things that you mentioned a second ago, they just sound expensive.
I mean, they are and they're not, but I think that, the basics, it's that stretching, the physical therapist, the chiropractor, and the massage therapist. That's kind of like setting up your team. Mm-hmm. So you want to have your little team, especially if you're going to do a big race, Ironman, marathon, whatever, ultras. And honestly, even if you're doing shorter distance racing, short speed, explosive speed, it's good to have these people kind of on your
Because Jed, whenever I finish my race, and they're interviewing me, the one day somebody's going to interview me after a race. I haven't been interviewed yet, but one day when somebody's interviewing, I want to thank my team, my physical therapist back home, my chiropractor. I want to be able to thank everybody, and have
when they correctly identify you as the greatest swimmer in the world,
greatest swimmer of all time. That's right. So people that want to get started, because I'm sure there's people like, you know what, I am absolutely laying an egg on this. I would probably say most people listening are either laying an egg on this or are vastly dropping the ball in this area. What would you say? Okay, you're going to get started doing this. Here's what you should start doing immediately. You can't say, don't just do it all.
No. I would say look at the app, Yoga with Adriene.
Okay. Yeah, you send.
Yes, I use her stuff all the time. It's a free yoga app, Yoga with Adriene or Do Yoga with Adriene. I'm not sure exactly how that is, but it is. She's got lots of short videos, yoga videos that are very doable for anybody. Just start with that. I would say by far that's the best place to just start. That way you're doing one thing. It's not about doing everything. It's about making progress, doing something differently. Sure, you can go to yoga class at the Y. That just takes a lot more effort, might not be as convenient, which means you might not do it. I know for me, like going to the Y to take a yoga class, it's never at a time when I can do it. And so like doing yoga at home, that's just so much easier. I'll actually do it. I don't have to have anybody looking at me when I can't do the poses. So it's just, I just prefer those.
And that is a big hang up for people when you start talking about yoga and those kind of things is, man, Jed, just picture me doing yoga.
I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, it is because you're self-conscious about it. I can't do all these things. You see some yoga things on TV that are like they're doing these crazy, but we're not doing
that kind of yoga. And so maybe 4 or 5 years ago, one of the coaches that worked with me, Sarah, she would lead us, like our team, in a yoga class. And it was really awesome because basically it was yoga for a bunch of triathletes who really couldn't do yoga. And we were all together in it. And, we are looking around the room and like Sarah's up there all twisted up like a pretzel. And the rest of us are kind of, trying to do it. But it was very, from an emotional standpoint, it was super supportive because none of us were good at it. But that's why they call it yoga practice, because you aren't good at it unless you practice. And another friend of mine, John, who I used to train with, he was a yogi, and I took his class at the YMCA, a cane halter. And the one day I was like, I can't do this pose. And I am in there in a class with people who could do yoga and me. And John came over to me and he quietly said, Katie, this is not a competition. He said, it's practice. And I was like, oh, he's like, just do what you can. And it's a great reminder that you don't have to be great at everything you do. Just do it.
Well, and it's making you're getting better at doing that. And it's helping you. And I'll just say this, that flexibility is not something that I would put on my resume as my top gifting. But since I have been disciplined, I told you this a couple of weeks ago, since I have been disciplined in stretching and doing yoga daily. I'll do it in the morning and I do it in the evenings. It's been the results, not only I think it's affected my running, my biking, but the way I feel is just nothing short of remarkable.
So that's my number one.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to do one thing on this list, go download the app, and on Adriene's website, you can search, like say your hamstrings are tight. You can search yoga for hamstrings or yoga for cyclists or yoga for sleep or yoga for joy. And she's got all these great videos. They're usually pretty short, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. And hey, it's a video. You're at home. If you don't like it, you can stop it.
So Jed, as she's talking about these things, I'm going to venture that you're probably a little bit like me in that stretching and flexibility and things have not been something that you've been spending a lot of time on.
No, not a whole lot. I know I need to. I can feel that I need to.
But when you hear her saying all these things and talking about all these things we need to do, what are some thoughts that come into your head?
That I'm probably going back to the chiropractor because I've been once literally one time in the past, and this is completely anecdotal evidence, but it helped the problem that I was having at the time. Now that I know that it exists for ankles, I'm probably going back. Mental health priority is probably where I'm going to start with a couple of different things there. It underscores the need to sometimes put yourself first, which, like you were saying a while ago, is something completely foreign sometimes to a lot of people. And I'm one of those people. I don't do that. Being selfish is hard for me, but I'm going to try.
Yeah. I think it's all of when we look at the totality and that whole person that we are, it is, we got one shot at this. We got one shot at this life. We got one shot at whether it's physical, emotional, mental, all these things. And so I think it's crucial that we step back and remove any of these obstacles and really, really take care of ourselves. And if you can't take care of yourself, what do they tell you whenever, and I know every time you get on an airplane, you probably don't listen to them. And I always feel sorry for the men and women that are up there doing their thing, because they're doing all these things and everybody's just not paying attention to them. But when they talk about the air thing coming down,
yes,
what do they say?
Take care of yourself first.
You put your oxygen on first.
Put your oxygen on first, because if you pass out, then you can't help the person that's needing your help. And so I hope that you leave this podcast with the encouragement to take the steps you need to take care of yourself. And if you will take care of yourself, ironically, these things that we want to do for other people, we're going to be able to do so much better, and we're going to be in a better spot for all those people that we interact with and that we care about. So it's a little bit different this time, but it's the same. It is the same, because it is hard to do these things. It's hard to take care of ourselves when we get so busy and we got all these other deals going on. But you've been given some really good tips, and we would encourage you with your self-care, with your mental health, your physical health, these other things, just do the hard things today, and tomorrow will take care of itself.